Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp here. You're listening to No Small Endeavor. This is our unabridged interview with James Kimmel Jr. No, not Jimmy Kimmel, not that Mr. Kimmel, but James Kimmel Jr. James is on the Yale University Medical School faculty, though not a doctor, a lawyer. As you'll hear in the interview, the important role his being a lawyer has played in his life's work. I must say, this is one of my favorite interviews I've done in a while. It's really profound and really remarkable, I think. And I think you'll find it just fascinating. There's one highly practical exercise to do that James took me through in like 3 minutes or less at the end of the interview that I think you'll also find. I'm still thinking about it. It's really fascinating. But you'll hear James talking about his new book, The Science of Revenge, Understanding the World's Deadliest Addiction. You'll hear a remarkable story about his own life as a young man that got him into doing this kind of work. Again, just remarkable all the way around. I hope you enjoy it. Here's James Kimmel Jr. Hello, my friends. We're getting ready to launch another No Small Endeavor cohort set to begin in September. These have been a delight. Our cohort invites intellectually curious individuals to deeply explore what it means to live a good life, with the ultimate goal that our work together will make space for greater resilience, joy, and a vision for how to contribute meaningfully to the world around us. If you're someone who's interested in asking big questions like what sort of life is a life worth living, and how am I pursuing my vision of a good life, if you're interested as well in considering those kinds of questions in light of moral philosophy, human psychology, and the social sciences, and a generous, hospitable Christian theology, then you might just be the perfect candidate. You can check out our socials or navigate to our website, nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. There you can learn more and submit an interest form. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. We look forward to hearing from you. James Kimmel, welcome to No Small Endeavor.
Lee, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I think your new book, Science of Revenge, a couple of years out now, is just brilliant. And I think it's so helpful. And I am deeply grateful for the work that you've been doing. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. And actually, it's only been out 1 year, just celebrated its anniversary last week. But it feels, I'm with you, it sort of feels like it's been out for a lot longer than that.
Well, I'm grateful that it's out. You know, it's common among academics to talk about research is me-search. And so I'm wondering if you would start, and you share some of this in the book, but I'm wondering if you would start with kind of your own biographical highlights that led you to doing this kind of work on revenge.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that because I do have a unique kind of, foundational story that has affected almost every day of my life since my teenage years. So I was raised on a farm in central Pennsylvania, and in my middle and upper teen years, I was subjected to a lot of bullying there. This was by a group of guys who lived on neighboring farms to ours. And that bullying culminated one night with them coming to our farm, our house, and staging an attack that ended up waking us up in the middle of the night to the sound of a gunshot. And you know, when I looked outside in the morning and went out to feed our animals, I found our dog, a hunting dog named Paula, a beagle, dead in her pen with a bullet hole in her head in a pool of blood. So it was a pretty shocking moment in my life. That was for sure.
Lord. Yeah. And then, as I recollect the story, this ramps up and then you end up finding yourself out for revenge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, you know, this was in the early 1980s. My parents, contacted the state police there, and they took a report after the dog shooting. But they made it clear they weren't going to do anything else about it. Not out of callousness. It's just their limitations of their resources. And I think they regarded it as a kid's thing, even though a dog had been killed. So they kind of dropped it. My parents weren't going to pursue it. My dad was an insurance agent who sold insurance to farmers and wasn't, I don't think, about to go and jeopardize what he did because of some dispute that none of us could understand between me and a group of boys on other farms. So it got dropped. 2 or 3 weeks later, I was home pretty late at night, by myself. It was dark. My parents were out somewhere. My brother was as well. And there was a vehicle that came to a stop. I could hear outside of our house, which was rare. We lived on a 1-lane country road. And when I got up to look outside to see what was going on, it was the same truck that had taken off a couple of weeks earlier after the gunshot in the middle of the night, a truck that I knew was driven by one of the guys who had been tormenting and bullying me for years. And then there was a flash and an explosion, and they blew up our mailbox. So that pickup truck took off again. Mm-hmm. And with that was, with that explosion of the mailbox, my own, the limits on my self-control detonated as well. And I wasn't able to hold that in anymore. And so I grabbed a gun. I'd been shooting guns since I was probably 8 years old on the farm, and my dad kept a loaded revolver in a nightstand, and I ran and I grabbed that gun, and I went off after those guys through the dark of the night, just, shouting and screaming in rage. And I eventually cornered them on one of their farms up against a barn. And so the scene there, was their pickup truck kind of nose first into a barn wall, and my car behind theirs with my bright beams on. And, what I could see at that time was 3 or 4 heads in the pickup truck window and the back window of the truck. And, they slowly got out and turned around and are squinting through my high beams to see who had just come flying down their 1-lane country road. So they're standing there, and what was clear to me is that they were unarmed. They didn't have any weapons in their hands, at least, maybe something in the truck. And they couldn't have known that I had a gun. So I really had the element of surprise. It was, kind of the perfect setup for some serious payback. And, I grabbed the gun off the passenger seat. I opened the driver's door and started to get out. But at the last second there, I had this sort of flash of insight or inspiration that kind of shot me into my future. And I could see, a couple of things. One was clear, is that if I went through with this, I'd have to live with a all new identity. I'd have to know myself as a killer, which is definitely not something I ever considered in my life. I'd been raised by good people. My grandfather was a Brethren pastor. My parents, took me to an Episcopal church all throughout my childhood. So it didn't square with me morally or ethically or spiritually or in any other way. So that was a startling kind of wake up second there. And the other thing that was clear to me is that I might not survive this event at all. There might be a shootout. Maybe they did have weapons in their truck. Maybe, well, for sure, probably their parents who were asleep in the farmhouse nearby did have guns. Maybe they'd come out guns a-blazing. Maybe there'd be a shootout with police. I'd surely be arrested and maybe incarcerated, and I wouldn't be here with you today. So there were 2 fast considerations. All that happened in like the blink of an eye, but it was enough, to cause me to stop and pause and then pull my leg back in the car, close the door, put the gun back on the seat, and back the car back down that lane and go home that night. So I'd come within seconds of committing what would be defined, at least at the time, as a mass shooting.
That's just incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I would imagine sharing that has to be a lot of emotion with that and pain with that. So I thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
You go on to say that in your younger adult life, you find a profession that fits that fits in the kind of revenge motif pretty well.
Yeah, that's the kind of the weird thing about this. I don't know if it's weird, but interesting is that, this event was obviously a big event that I've just described. That's a huge event in anybody's life. It's a terrifying, life-changing moment. But you might think, well, that could, in most instances, for most people, you eventually sort of move past that and you go on with your life. It might affect a lot of things you do, but it probably doesn't affect you the way it did me. So it led me, when I drove away, just even that, from that night and, for weeks, months, and years forward, I wasn't thinking forgiveness. I mean, that was just not at all part of my mentality. I mean, I understood that forgiveness was a concept. I didn't really understand as a teenager what that meant or what its importance might be. I think my understanding was kind of vague and maybe related to something that happens in an afterlife, if there is one. What the event really did is it caused me to kind of want revenge even more. I just realized that I wasn't willing to pay that high of a price to get it. So for me, I kind of went on a quest to go, how can I get this feeling that I really wanted that night of retaliation and payback and getting even? How could I get that on discount, right? I was like, how can I, I wanted to find the Walmart of revenge, so that I could go in there and go, look, I'm paying low, but I'm getting a good product. And
I can't imagine that Yale Law School is going to like that phrase.
No, I'm actually at the medical school, so maybe even more. That might be a little bit even more questionable. But that's you're right. But that's how I felt, and I think that's actually how a lot of people feel, and we could talk about that in a little bit, about revenge getting, because we want it bad, but the smarter of us, the people that have better self-control kind of know to stop before they overpay, right? Because you can overpay all the way to the point of ruining your life. And so it was clear to me that I had come real close to doing that. But what occurred to me then, I had grown up wanting to be a farmer, first of all. So that was my occupation of choice as a teenager. I wanted to be a farmer. And then after this happened, I was like, maybe I'll be a truck driver. I was not a good student. I wasn't an academic kind of guy. I was barely floating along with, C's. When this happened, after this happened, at some point, I can't really put my finger on when, but I came upon the idea of being able to get revenge, not only at a discount, but completely without paying for it, getting it for free. And in addition, getting paid to give it to other people. And that's when I decided, I could become a lawyer. That's what I can do, because that's what we lawyers do, and that's what I became. We lawyers are hired by people with grievances to go out and get even much of the time. Now, not all lawyers and not all the time, but much of the time, especially litigators, that's what the job really entails: is getting legalized forms of revenge and getting paid to do that.
At what point in your law practice did you become aware that that's what you were doing, or when did you begin to frame your vocational work in that regard or in that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think it happened too early. Early on in my legal career, I was just like, give me all the revenge I can, get it. Keep trying to get people to pay me for it. I'm loving it. Every little hit I got made me feel great. And there are small, there are like hundreds or maybe thousands of small little opportunities inside every piece of litigation to feel these little moments of retaliation that give you this kind of burst or this high, and I'm using language that wasn't probably top of my mind at that time. I just knew that I felt good doing it. I knew that my clients felt good when I did it for them and when I reported it to them. And I'm talking about even little things like a nasty email or a nasty piece of negotiation or a phone call or filing a motion or a brief, filing that complaint and knowing that the other side is going to have a bad day. Like giving the other side a bad day is part of what this is all about. But lawyers, sell it in the brand name justice, which is the legalized form of the illegal form, which is, called revenge. Kind of like doctors are able to sell or get involved in the sale of opioids. If you sell it in the name of OxyContin or Percocet and it comes from a pharmaceutical company, it's okay. If you have that magical doctor license, but it's not okay if you're a guy on the street selling it that came out of somebody's shack somewhere. And that's kind of the way it is with the law, too. You know, we have the special license, the lawyers do, to be able to sell this legalized form of revenge, but it gets manufactured inside a courthouse the way, you know, a pharmaceutical gets manufactured inside of a pharmaceutical factory. So there's a lot of parallels there, kind of a little bit scary, actually, when you start to think about it, particularly if it's addictive. And that's what I eventually, I'd say, you know, halfway through my legal career, maybe five, or not even halfway, maybe the first 5 years, around the year 5 or 10, I started to notice something's wrong. I'm liking this too much, and it's starting to seep into my personal life. So I was not only a paid avenger during my work hours, but I would come home and I would become, an all-time avenger in my home with my wife and my kids, elder relatives, people in the community, people cutting me off in traffic, messing around with me, standing in the grocery store line, you know, and then starting to look for, really starting to constantly always looking for this opportunity to feel offended, betrayed, humiliated, shamed, hurt, all these things that we refer to as grievances, kind of looking for that opportunity, because when that comes with, oh, I can now build that into an opportunity to retaliate. And that makes me feel good. And it seems to make other people feel good. And I started to look at society in a broader scope, right? The media, all the crime, the violent crime that we see, and all of the other discord and conflict. And I'm going, oh man, this is starting to form a pattern for me that looks like something that might be an addiction. And so it's around those years, 5 or 10 years into my legal career, that I started to notice it. It took me another 10 years for it to almost destroy me. And that ended one night, or kind of the ending point in my mind was when I found myself alone in a spare bedroom contemplating suicide. I had tried for years to get away from it. The money was good. That kept me there in part, but also these good feelings. I could stop for a little while and then I'd be dragged right back into it. You know, kind of that addictive, try to quit, you know, it's bad for you, you know, it's kind of ruining you, but you just keep, you know, getting drawn towards it.
Yeah. Thank you. So already you've used parallels with drugs, addiction, and your own experience being analogous to addiction. And yet you're making the case in this book that it's not merely analogous to addiction, but that it is literally addiction. So talk to us then about, you have this provocative phrase for one of the chapters or sections, Your Brain on Revenge. So tell us, what does it look like? What's our brain on revenge look like?
Yeah, your brain on revenge, it turns out, looks like your brain on drugs. And that is not a metaphor. That is the result of neuroscience studies that started about 20 years ago, which was that this was the pivotal moment for me. Like, I would say pivotal moment 3, right? So first was the shooting, or almost shooting, I should say, shooting of my dog. Next, you know, was my beginning of my legal career, and then this descent into the pits of just revenge seeking as a career and as a lifestyle. And then kind of going, I feel hooked, but look, man, there are no 12-step programs for revenge addicts. How am I going to get saved here? Although there are now, I want to stop and drop a little advertisement for Revenge Anonymous, which I created this past year. RevengeAnonymous.org is a 12-step program for revenge addicts. So if you're one of us, come to a meeting. You know, it's online, it's on Zoom, it's there every week. So we're open for business, and we're starting to grow. But
Remarkable.
I guess going back to your point, though, is what occurred is around 2004 was the first brain imaging study where neuroscientists put study participants inside of an fMRI brain scanner, or a PET scanner. It might have been then that study. Most of the time it's fMRI. But they put them inside a brain scanner, gave them a grievance, which is to say a real or imagined perception of having been wronged, so mistreated, treated unfairly. Any form of victimization is kind of a grievance. So they give them a grievance, a reason to feel like they've just been badly treated. These were in economic games at first, so somebody cheated on them in an economic game. And then an opportunity to retaliate, which is to say to punish the person who had wronged them, and watched what happens inside your brain when all this occurs. And what it turns out what occurs, and I'm going to like lump a bunch of studies together now and not just stay on that 2004 study, which was early and didn't have all the information. But what the total picture looks like as of about today is grievances activate the pain network inside your brain, which is known as the anterior insula. That is physical pain. So even psychological pains, like harms to your ego, like I'm saying, humiliation, shame, betrayal, social isolation, and any of these things that you experience, getting insulted or disrespected. These things are actually physical pain inside your brain. And when you experience this physical pain, your brain, it wants to stay in homeostasis. It wants to stay balanced between pain and pleasure. Now you have an overabundance of pain. It needs to add pleasure onto the scale. And how it turns out it does that, we now know from these brain imaging studies, is that it activates the pleasure and reward circuitry of addiction, the very same area that's activated for drug addicts and for gambling addicts as well, and for any other kind of addiction that you may have heard of. So it is evolutionary psychologists have theorized pretty persuasively that we humans have evolved to derive enormous pleasure from hurting the people who hurt us or their proxies. And this begins to explain almost every form of human violence and intentionally inflicted human suffering, because they all tend to start, and we have separate evidence for this that I can talk about in a little bit, but they all tend to start with whoever you believe is the perpetrator in your life or on TV or in a TV show or, in real life in the news. Whoever is identified as the perpetrator, in almost all cases, sees themselves as a victim first. And it is that sense of victimization, having that grievance, that motivates them to hurt another person, either directly or by proxy. And this it turns out, can actually become compulsive and addictive.
That's just so fascinating. So many things about that. One thing that just popped in my mind, I recollect that in the 12 steps, the fourth and the fifth step, I think it is, where you do an inventory of your so-called character defects, but one of the primary ones that's focused upon is resentments. And then fifth step, you share that with somebody else. But it's remarkable there that what you're pointing to is that the grievances trigger the acting out of whatever stripe of alcohol or drugs or whatever. And even in the 12-step world, there's this recognition that the more you sit in that resentment, in that grievance, the more likely you are to lean into that, whatever it is that you're addicted to. So I don't know. It's just fascinating. So I guess obviously you are finding all sorts of parallels with the 12-step world, recovery world, and what you're seeing in neuroscientific studies about revenge.
Yeah, I think you put your finger right on it, Lee. What we're really talking about is self-medicating to manage pain, right? So you get this pain of a grievance. Some people might self-medicate that with narcotics. Some people might with alcohol or tobacco or gambling. Another way that we do it is through revenge seeking, which is to say to hurt the other person who hurt us or and I want to emphasize their proxy. It's not just a technical term. There's a perception, I think in the public that revenge always and has to, you can't be revenged unless you're targeting the actual person who hurt you. And that's very not true. I'll just give you a quick example of what I mean please. There. You have a bad day at work. Your boss maybe, does something you think is unfair, or a coworker, or you get disrespected. You'd love to retaliate against your boss or your coworker or whoever messed with you. But you realize that doing that might, ruin your job and your chance to have a good living. So you hold that in and you wait and you go home maybe that evening And now you can pick a less risky target, like maybe your intimate partner, or maybe you do the classic thing and you kick your dog, or you just punch the wall. In any of those instances, what you're doing is you're kind of seeking revenge by proxy against the person who really hurt you, but you're doing it in a way that's lower cost. What I was saying, from the beginning here about getting, revenge on discount. You can do it in a safer way there, but it is still revenge seeking. It may not be, you didn't hit the actual target, but from your perspective and what you're doing is you're trying to manage your own pain, you're self-medicating at that point, and it feels good to kick that dog or punch that wall, or maybe pick that unfair fight with your intimate partner. You might be ashamed to admit that that's true, because poor innocent dog, right? Just laying there and it just got walloped. That's not fair. But it's part of human existence. And we kind of need to bring that to light and understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. And this neurologically or neurobiologically, this is why we're doing it.
And then, of course, you point to a number of extreme cases of this with mass shootings and manifestos. But would you unpack some of that for us?
Yeah, happy to do that. And that's what we see. So what I've just described, but on kind of like on steroids, is what we see with mass shooters. The FBI, the Secret Service, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, and other organizations and researchers have studied, because we're all interested in, why are mass shooters doing this and what can we do to stop it, right? How can we anticipate it and wind that down before people get killed and massacred? And what they have seen in these studies is that mass shooters are generally considered to be grievance collectors. So, they're collecting these feelings of pain, like I was describing, starting to look for the pain, because you look for the pain because that gives you the chance to get that pleasure. So if you're a grievance collector and your pains are deep and you're not able to resolve them, for some percentage of people, there are going to be small moments of revenge along the way, but the ultimate revenge act, right? The ultimate one is a mass shooting. I mean, you're inflicting massive mega pain on society itself, because you usually at that point, when we read the manifestos, they're angry at the world, right? The world is the perpetrator for them, and the world needs to be punished. And we see this time and time again in manifestos. They might focus on any number of subsets within the world too, like the target might be, people of a different religion, or people of a different sexuality, or people of a different skin color, people of a different nationality. I mean, or your classmates at school, the popular kids, and on and on. It kind of doesn't matter. At the neurobiological level, they're all targets for revenge seeking, and for a certain group of people, they want that ultimate high, even at the risk of being killed in the process. And most mass shooters know the risk is very high that they're not going to survive, or at a minimum, they're going to be incarcerated for life. And this is why it's an addiction, because despite knowing those severe consequences to themselves and all of the people they're going to harm in the families, they do it anyway. They can't control it. That is a compulsive behavior. It is not evil. It is not the devil. It's not being born bad. These are people, and we need to understand that. We used to blame those things, evil, the devil, being born bad, God's judgment, on things like the Black Plague. I mean, that was the answer for the explanation for the Black Plague for thousands of years, until finally some biologists figured out, oh, it's a bacteria inside a flea that travels on a rat that jumps onto your skin that infects you. That's why the Black Plague happens. And this is really deep insight into why we hurt other people and do terrible, horrific things, including things like murder, suicides. How does a father, typically, but not always, how does a father who's in love with a woman, creates a family, loves his kids, suddenly go on a killing spree and kill all of them and then himself? Almost in all cases, that is because that father had a serious set of grievances that he did not manage, and he went on the ultimate revenge act and took them all out and took himself out. That is why we need to think of this as a medical and mental health problem, and not only a moral or philosophical problem.
Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp here. At No Small Endeavor, we spend a lot of time talking about a good life, but the truth is, a good life is not something we can figure out alone. It's something we discover together in community. That's why we created Endeavor Together. Endeavor Together helps small groups gather to talk about the big questions of life using episodes of the No Small Endeavor podcast. Each series is a simple 4-week guide with questions, short videos, and prompts designed to spark meaningful conversation. We've just released our newest series called A Good Life. It's a 4-part exploration of what it means to pursue a life worth living in community. Here's how it works. Participants listen to a podcast episode ahead of time, then gather with a group to talk it through. We provide the framework for great conversation. The best part is, thanks to our friends at the Lilly Endowment Incorporated, it's completely free. You can explore A Good Life along with our other conversation series like Let's Disagree Better and Vulnerability by visiting nosmallendeavor.com or clicking the link in the show notes.
This summer, say I do.
I am marrying a stranger.
Like never before.
Am I crazy?
It's a whole new Married at First Sight on Peacock.
Thank God I woke up in love.
With new experts.
My name is Dr. Lisa.
My name is Paul Brunson.
More couples.
This could be the start of a very successful marriage.
And more surprises.
Or maybe not.
Everything is just not enough.
You're a little bit crazy.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I want my fairy tale ending.
Married at First Sight, streaming July 12th, only on Peacock.
Listen to the heartbeat.
Chevy is called the heartbeat of America for a reason. With SUVs made to move with your rhythm. The versatile Equinox tackles your entire day. The spacious Traverse fits your crew and your whole weekend. And Trax brings style with value you can count on. All infused with tech that has your back, so your drive always hits the right chord. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
You look at several ways in which people kind of proactively help, I'll put help in scare quotes, proactively help people collect grievances, KKK among them. How does that work?
A really interesting question, and I'm not asked about that very often. And how I know this is I've interviewed, for instance, a member, not only the KKK, but he was the guy that I'm thinking of as a KKK. Not a Grand Dragon, but all of a sudden the term escapes me. But he was the enforcer for the KKK, and he had a lifetime of having been, as a kid, sexually abused by a relative, a male relative, and then he went from there, and that guy was never punished, and he was relentlessly abused. Then he went into the military on 9/11. After the terrorists struck. And he goes to the Middle East, does a lot of horrific things and sees a lot of horrific violence, has his buddy killed in front of him, comes home now, becomes addicted to drugs almost instantaneously, has an accident in a military vehicle, hurts his back, gets put on opioids, gets hooked on those, hooked on other drugs. So now his life is just really descending. And as he's fallen like through every crack, the KKK show up, and they show up not with, as he described it, they didn't show up to talk to me with hoods and pitchforks. They showed up with, hot dogs and a Bible. That's all. And they reached out to him and said, "We understand your pain, man, and we want to be your friend." And that was the slow way of recruiting an individual into that culture of ultimate hatred. And he, when he joined it, he didn't, he makes clear he didn't have a problem with blacks. He really had a problem though with gay people because he had been abused by this male uncle or male relative. And so his focus was kind of on that niche and also on Muslims, because when he had been in the Middle East after 9/11, that was his enemy. They killed his buddy. They always threatened his life. So it really all boils down, again, it kind of doesn't matter what costumes we wear. It all boils down to how are you hurt? How are you injured? And what are you doing with that? And are you getting the help you need to manage it? He was not, and the KKK filled that gap. And he went on to become a Nighthawk is what it is. That's the title. Sorry. He went on to become a KKK Nighthawk until he finally freed himself. And he's now become a full-time uh, uh, violent extremist interrupter, and he saves people from violent extremism and brings them back into society. It's an amazing journey that he tells.
Yeah, it's remarkable to consider that once one knows how these mechanisms work, that you can use them for ill purposes, right? And of course, we know the more that has been learned about dopamine and so-called neural marketing and the social media world and so forth, the way that's like intentionally manipulated to get our dopamine drips running in our brain. But you talk about even Disney's Lion King as one example that's perverse in this regard.
Yeah, that is perverse, and it's shocking to a lot of people because that's such a beloved movie. I know that, my kids liked it. On first watching, I hated it. I loved the music. I loved the gags. I loved the animation. But I instantly, when I saw it at a time when I was sensitized to this, and I thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing to our kids? This hugely dominant, popular movie is... First, it starts out with the most horrific of types of injuries you can inflict on a child. So we all, human beings, have this unique ability to empathize with other people. So we experience other people's emotions. We do. We have brain structures that allow this to happen. And we do this even with, fictional characters like little Simba in that movie. And Simba's dad is cruelly killed by, the father's brother, Simba's uncle. And Simba, and even worse, and Simba is blamed by the father's uncle for the death of his own dad. These are deep, painful wounds. And I remember seeing that movie and feeling that deep pain and going, oh, don't make me watch more of this. This is just too harsh for me. I was an adult. I couldn't imagine what was going through my kids' minds. It's terrifying. And then Simba goes on this journey. Tries to shake it, tries to overcome it, is kicked out of the kingdom by the uncle who's now the king. He goes on this journey and he seems to be doing well, but his friends, his buddies, start dragging him back into it and saying, you know what, you got to go back and confront that king. You got to do something about this. You're going to have to stop this guy, and you're going to have to retaliate. And Simba kind of doesn't want to do it at first, to his credit. But then he succumbs and he goes back, and there's a big ultimate conflict between him and the uncle, and Simba kills him in the most horrific way. And that's what, of course, we all are rooting for, right? We want Scar, the uncle. We want that guy dead because of what he did to Mufasa and to Simba. And we get our heart's content desire at the end. We're just a feast of revenge seeking when Scar is, projected off the cliff, falls down a cliff. He is simultaneously burned to death and eaten alive by hyenas. That is pretty rough stuff. Again, to be feeding kids, I just feel like that is such a mistake because you're just teaching the kids the way to solve every problem, right? The biggest ones is to go for the maximum revenge in order to make yourself feel better. And the movie ends with everybody, there's Simba sitting on the rock, and he's now king, and he's got all of the riches of the world. And there's no acknowledgement of really what he paid to get that and what he did to get there. And so it's really a cautionary tale about media. It's also a cautionary tale today about social media. We know that social media algorithms are built to hook us on our grievances. They're a grievance transmission machine. They're a dealer. That is a dealer system in which it gives you the grievance, which makes you want revenge, and then it gives you the whole system is built on allowing you to get your revenge instantaneously, 24/7, using your cell phone. You can respond with that mean tweet. You can do that cancel culture. You can even use those platforms to plan real world acts of revenge, like happened on, January 6th at the Capitol, where, a lot of that Capitol riot was planned on social media. So you get the feeling of grievance on social media. You get the opportunity to gratify that grievance on social media. There's no surprise, therefore, that humanity is hooked on it. And America, it really is now a very revenge addicted culture, unfortunately. And it doesn't matter. I want to be clear. It doesn't matter left or right. Revenge is a human problem. It is not a It's not a liberal or a conservative problem by any means. I'm not making any kind of political statement. I'm just saying that this is a human issue that we all need to face.
We're going to turn to practices of forgiveness in just a moment, but I can imagine somebody saying, well, it certainly sounds like liberal stuff because people ought just to be held accountable for what they do. And you're giving people an out by calling it a disease. How do you respond to folks who might say that?
Great question. So several things that we want to think about. The first is, I'm careful to distinguish in my book, The Science of Revenge, between revenge seeking and self-defense, first of all. Like, that's a foundational, important understanding. Revenge seeking is always trying to punish people for things that happened in the past. So it's all very temporal. If you're trying to hurt somebody for something they did some time ago, that's revenge seeking. It's punishment. That's different from defending yourself in response to an imminent threat to yourself or other people, where you're facing a direct threat. That's a different area of your brain that's working entirely. It's called the amygdala. And that thing operates at very fast speed. That's the thing that saves your life when you step off the curb and you suddenly realize there's a bus bearing down at you. You need a part of your brain that's not going to debate. It's going to go, hey, get out of the way, like fast as you can, or you're going to die. So that's self-defense and that's survival, right? Where we've adapted as human beings to have that skill and we need to live. Unfortunately, we've also now adapted to wanting to punish people for things that happened in the past that no longer exist in this world at all. I mean, you cannot experience anything in the past with any of your bodily senses. And you can't experience these harms to your ego that I've been talking about, betrayal, disrespect, shame. You can't experience those either if they happened in the past. And yet we're using them as if they are threatening our actual lives. And we're reacting in highly violent, dangerous, and retaliatory ways sometimes. Not everybody, of course. We think only maybe about 15, 20% of people might become revenge addicts who can't control their desire for revenge. So most people, most of the time, are controlling it. But the rest of us, we need some help. And I consider myself a recovering revenge addict. So I'm willing to put myself into that category. We need some type of help for that. So to your question of, are we letting people off the hook, though, when they've done something wrong in the past? Well, the next thing that I talk about is that let's talk about, the simpler, but more severe cases like violence. Somebody who's shown themselves to be violent, right? Has become violent, needs to be removed from society because they are a threat, an ongoing threat of harm. And until that threat has been abated, it makes sense to incarcerate or some other way isolate people from society for that. So there's no free pass on this whatsoever, either at the criminal justice system or in your own life, because forgiveness does not mean that you're communicating with or giving pardon to the person who wronged you. The forgiveness that I teach and that a lot of psychologists now teach, there's two forms. There's decisional forgiveness and emotional. Decisional forgiveness is an internal decision of self-healing purely for you to recover from trauma and wrongs of the past. In that experience, you're making a decision to forgive without even letting the person who wronged you know that you've done it. You don't need to talk to them. You don't need to pardon them. You don't need to stay in a toxic relationship or become a permanent victim. You can extricate yourself from that relationship or protect yourself in all the ways that are necessary, in effect, self-defense measures, while you're forgiving what happened. Because if you don't forgive it, it's still a pain inside your brain. And we'll talk for a minute about what forgiveness does inside your brain, and it is truly miraculous. It actually stops pain instead of covering it up with a dopamine hit. So there are lots of important ways to understand that we're not giving anybody a free pass by forgiving. That is a misunderstanding of what forgiveness does. You can use forgiveness in emotional forgiveness settings to repair a relationship if you want to, and it's possible to do. But that is by no means necessary in order to heal yourself from the wrongs of the past more permanently than just getting a quick dopamine hit that covers it up.
Very helpful. So let's turn to what your brain looks like on forgiveness.
Great. So if your brain on revenge looks like your brain on drugs, and revenge, therefore, is what I call the world's deadliest addiction, forgiveness looks like detox inside your brain. And that it is really, again, not too much of a metaphor there. It's a little bit of a metaphor because you're not actually, ingesting a drug, but your brain is detoxing in the following ways. So neuroscientists have put people inside of fMRI brain scanners, given them a grievance, and then given them an opportunity, instead of retaliating, but an opportunity to forgive, and then watched what your brain looks like on forgiveness. And here's what we find. What you see there is, you see first that pain network, the anterior insula that's activated by the grievance, the sense of victimization. Forgiveness shuts that down. And I can't emphasize how important that is. I mean, it stops pain. It does not just cover it up. Revenge seeking gives you a quick dopamine hit, doesn't last very long, maybe minutes, and then the pain is right back at you. Forgiveness actually stops the pain. Now, I don't want to oversell it either, because forgiveness might stop the pain, a decision to forgive. It might only stop it for a few minutes at first. But you can take forgiveness like as often as you want and need until the pain just doesn't come back. And so we think about any drug or medicine. In almost all cases, medicine rarely knows any drug or therapy where it's one and done, especially with medicines. And that's the way it is with forgiveness. If you're going to use forgiveness to heal yourself, you might need a couple bottles of it, right? You might need to be on it for a little while, just like you might need to be on other drugs in order to heal a wound or heal a disease. So it makes sense that forgiveness would need to be repeated, but it actually shuts that area of the brain down, the pain network. The second thing that it does is it also
before you go on, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about how remarkable that is. So the choice here we have is we have literally in our brains the network that is the same network for physical pain that we're experiencing when we feel a grievance or when we feel pain or feel unjustly treated. And there's real pain there. And our brain, in seeking homeostasis, goes out looking for something that's going to get the dopamine drip going. And revenge is a very powerful way to get that dopamine drip running. And the pleasure pain balances itself out, but only for a short term. And then the pain comes back with a vengeance, with its own vengeance, we might say. Whereas here, what you're suggesting is that forgiveness, which I guess happens more in our prefrontal cortex, a different part of our brain, it actually just stops the pain and shuts that part of the brain down? Is that kind of the choice that we've got here?
Yes, you got it right up to that point, but it does even more than that. So the next thing it does, so it shuts down the pain, it stops down the anterior insula, the pain network. The next thing it does is it also shuts down that pleasure and reward circuitry of addiction, what you call the dopamine drip. So it's shutting down that circuitry as well. So when you forgive, you're not only suddenly experiencing this loss of the pain that has been nagging you and eating on you, maybe for all of your life, until you forgive, probably all your life, if you carry it for all your life. But it also stops the revenge fantasies, the revenge rumination. It stops all of that craving for revenge and plotting and planning. Oh, I'd love to be able to get this person and I could do it this way or I could do it this way. I mean, for some people, these revenge thoughts and fantasies can become dominant and kind of take over a lot of their mental space. You know, when we talk about people kind of living for free inside your head, that's part of what we're really talking about is, this pain. The person who hurt you is kind of living for free inside your head, which is to say they're dominating your thought processes in your mental space. Well, forgiveness shuts that down too. And then the last thing that does is, and you just mentioned about the prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, your brain's executive function and control circuitry. That's the area of your brain that stops you from doing things that hurt yourself or other people. And it's a cost benefit thing. That's where I wanted revenge on discount. That's that front part of the brain there that is doing a cost benefit analysis. Well, forgiveness activates that part of the brain. So it's giving you better decision making as well. And it's giving you more clarity on what is truly in your own best interest. Is it really in your own best interest to go on a revenge binge, or is it in your best interest to forgive, not as a gift to the person who wronged you, but as a gift of healing to yourself?
I mean, is it fair to say that you're giving us kind of social and scientific rationale and understanding into things that people like Jesus, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. have been telling us a long time ago about forgiveness?
Yeah, what I've really concluded that we now have neuroscientific evidence to support the forgiveness teachings of people like Jesus and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and, other luminaries throughout human history who have taught forgiveness. And I think if you look back on, for instance, Jesus's famous teachings, on forgiveness, whether it's, turning the other cheek and renouncing the Mosaic law of an eye for an eye, or in particular, I'm fond of, when he was asked, I think by Peter, I'm not sure, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times? And Jesus says, no, it's 70 times 7 is how often. I like that because that really gets at the heart of this idea of a medicine like forgiveness or like any medicines. You got to take it more than once. And so it's not that you need to do it to be a better person, right? I mean, I think throughout history, churches and other religious organizations across all of the world's religions have taught this as a noble, better way to live. And, it's closer to God, perhaps, or something like that. And those all those things may be true and they're important for a lot of people. But we now know scientifically that they have a neurobiological truth, which is that they stop pain. But as Jesus was saying there, you got to take it more than one time. You shouldn't expect one dose. And, your trauma will stay, the pain of it will be gone forever. We kind of put that burden on it. It doesn't work once and we go, the heck with it. It doesn't work. I'll go back to revenge seeking and get my dopamine hit. It's a bad idea. And it's not supported in the science, let alone in the philosophy.
That's the way you describe that is a really interesting, I'm going to geek out theologically just a second. That's really an interesting, different hermeneutical approach to Jesus saying, forgive 70 times 7. But a lot of times what happens in discussions about that is there's this sort of presumption that Jesus is pushing us toward the hard, almost impossible thing of somebody violates us, and we just keep, accepting it or whatever. And yet what I hear you saying is, oh, no, that's not it at all. It's that Jesus is pointing us towards the fact that the internal practices of forgiveness is a lifelong practice that we must continue to attend to over and over and over again. I just think that, what a great, I don't guess you knew you were going to do New Testament interpretation here today, but that's pretty great.
I don't think I did. It's good to talk to a theologian who can, uncover some of that. And I do agree, but I would even say that, you're right. I get what you're saying. I felt that burden as well. 70 times 7 means you should keep doing it to be a better person or as a pathway to heaven, and it might be. But the reason 70 times 7 is so valuable is because it is a mechanism for healing pains that have no other way of being healed. So much of our lives, right? We experience grievances on a daily. Sigmund Freud thought we experienced them on an almost minute by minute basis. In our subconscious, we're all minute by minute doing away with and wanting to essentially kill all the people who get in our way and insult us. So we're filled. And by the time I'm 62. By the time you're 62, you got tons of grievances, right? And we have tons of pain. And it's like, how do I heal all of that mess? I mean, how can I go forward another day? And what I think this is signifying and kind of pointing us in the direction of, and it, like I say, we now have scientific evidence to support it, is that we have a mechanism. It's built in. I mean, we are as hardwired to forgive as we are hardwired to seek revenge. And we are really missing an enormously powerful wonder drug opportunity, or also I call it a human superpower opportunity to heal ourselves and go forward with our lives, happily and nobly, by forgiving the pains of the past. even if we're not letting anybody off the hook, we can use this to heal ourselves, and we'll eventually get to the highest forms of forgiveness over time. So 70 times 7, great advice.
You have done a lot of work making this very practical. Your non-justice system, your app, the Miracle Court app, your website, savingcain.org. And obviously we don't have enough time to go into all extensive resources that you've provided in that regard. But imagine somebody's listening and they just say, okay, well, give me some practical advice about how to start leaning into this and how to start practicing. What's your place you would encourage folks to start?
Okay, two things. One is, go to my website, www.jameskimmeljr.com. That has a lot of resources, including a free quiz that you can take, just 10 questions that'll give you a very quick and deep insight into your relationship with revenge and whether you might be at a higher risk or a lower risk of potentially being a revenge addict. And you'll see some people, and some people, even if it's not you, you might think of people that you know or see in the news or see anywhere in society who you might go, oh, that helps to explain a lot about their behavior. And even just knowing that other people are struggling with this can help the rest of us sort of get along, avoid some problems, maybe even help. So that's one thing to do. But the other is, I want to give you a really quick way right here, like right now, if you're game, Lee, to help listeners experience the feeling of forgiveness like now and see how easy it actually is. So, Lee, if you can just think of any grievance that you might be carrying, right? It might have been something that's lasted for years, even back to your childhood. It might be something as fresh as this morning on your way to work and you were cut off in traffic. It doesn't matter. You don't have to.
Are you going to ask me to disclose this?
No, I was just going to say,
Okay.
You do not have to disclose it. I wouldn't put you on the spot like that, because I want you to really think about it as kind of a significant grievance. So I'm not going to ask you to disclose it, but just think about it for a second. Okay. So just bring it up, and I'll tell you, you'll know the right one, because if it pops in your head, that's all you need, because that means you haven't let it go, right? You're still carrying it. And it's your pain, right? It's one of your pains, maybe. We all have them. And so it's just very natural and normal. We all have got it. And I want listeners to do the same thing. So, or audience members. So
I've got it, and I've got the tightness in my chest.
There you go. You can feel that tight. You can feel that pain. I'm glad you described that as tightness, because that's a really good explanation of when you're thinking of the grievance. That's what you're feeling. You're feeling that weight and that constriction, that tightness. Now, so just think about it for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, please do not try to forgive it. This is going to sound contrary to what I was trying to accomplish, but just go with me for a moment. Don't try to forgive it. Instead, just use your imagination to imagine what it might feel like if you did forgive it. So you're keeping your grievance. You're not letting it go. It's all safe here. It's still nice and snug in your brain. But imagine how it would feel if you decided to forgive for just a second. Just decided to let it go. So tell me what words you would describe that.
Well, that is fascinating. That quickly it changed my physical sensation. The tightness left, and I was able to breathe more deeply, and I just had a sense of ease. That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? And that's what I mean. Forgiveness is a wonder drug. That was not me doing anything amazing. That is forgiveness that's been taught for centuries, and that we all are hardwired to doing something amazing. It is truly a human superpower you can experience, and what you've experienced. So what would we say? What I would say, I'm not a neuroscientist. I want to be clear about that. My training is as a lawyer, even though I'm a professor or assistant professor at the Yale School of Medicine. But what I would tell you, based on the evidence that exists so far, is what you've just experienced is that pain network inside your brain, the anterior insula, that shut down. That's why you felt that release. Those pleasure and reward circuitry of your brain, the revenge craving area, that also shut down. So you were no longer plagued by revenge thoughts and revenge fantasies. And then the last thing that was happened is your executive function area, the prefrontal cortex, came back online. So all that can happen in almost like a split second. I mean, it didn't take you a second or two.
Yeah.
So it is amazing.
And it was simple. Yeah. And it was simply imagining forgiving.
And that was just imagining. That's right. Thank you for emphasizing that. So that was just imagining it. Now you might go, okay, that felt good, but now, the pain's back. I'm starting to feel the constriction again. Okay, now we do the 70 times 7 thing, but still imagining. So just go back to imagining. Oh yeah, how did that feel? How would that feel if I let it go now? Boom, same result. I feel lighter. A lot of people describe the feelings, they use words like relief, release, a weight coming off their shoulders, sometimes happiness, maybe even joy. I mean, these are a great thing. I mean, who doesn't want all of this? If I could go to a pharmaceutical company and say, I have a drug, guys, that will stop pain, completely shut down the pain network, and act in seconds, and it's better than Tylenol or any opioid because it's non-addictive. They'd be like, okay, here's $1 billion. We'd like you to license that. But in this case, it's free. It's already, your brain manufactures it in vast quantity. It has no known side effects. It doesn't have any known drug interactions. You can use it anytime, anywhere. You don't need a doctor. You don't need a prescription. You don't need a trip to the pharmacy. I mean, it can't get any better than that, right?
Yes. Remarkable. And I'll just remind listeners again, they can go to your website, get a lot more resources, and in your book, your new book, lots of resources there that are they're immensely helpful.
Yeah, that's the best place. It has everything in one spot.
Yeah. One area that I found myself wondering and kind of internally pushing back on, and I'd love to hear what you say. You say numerous times, this is not for the other person, it's for you. And that makes sense to me at one level, that the way you're describing this, because just the exercise I just did, the other person wasn't involved in it at all. It was for me, and it was good for me. So that makes complete sense. But it seems to me that your own book is making a larger argument than that. And that really what you're saying is, yes, you want this for individuals, but I think you also want this to be considered a social good, a desperately needed social good. So I don't know, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we all want that, right? I mean, if I'm correct, America is, kind of stuck right now in a revenge addicted mode. And I think even just like people, we go through these cycles where, and just like any, addiction is known as a lapsing disease, right? It comes and goes. You're in control, and then wham, man, you are off the wagon and you're back in it again. I think that happens for individuals, of course, and we know that. It also happens for societies. Societies are just organisms of many individuals. America, other nations around the world, throughout human history, and I cover human history in my book in detail, we go through these cycles of vengeance seeking, and then forgiveness. America has done this many times. Think about, the Civil War as an incredible revenge addicted period for America. And the years following, where we recovered from that, and the North, people in the North and the South forgave each other for these atrocities that happened sometimes just a few years or maybe a few decades earlier. Same thing after World War II. World War II was a revenge abomination across the world. It ends. America, instead, after World War II, decides, and the Allies decide to forgive Germany and Japan, and instead of trying to ruin them and punish them into oblivion, supports them and uplifts them. And now they're some of America's and the Allies' strongest allies. These are miraculous things if you think about it, and they are only possible through forgiveness. So at a societal level, you can't beat this. And if we want America to be a better place, and I think everybody does, it starts by making America forgiving again. I call it MAFA. I'm not a MAGA guy. I'm a MAFA guy. I want America to be forgiving again is what I want. And I believe most people probably do. Whether you're the recipient of forgiveness or the offerer, it just improves everything as soon as you start forgiving and stop retaliating. It just has these benefits. I actually thought you were going to go, Lee, into more of a theological direction, in where if you think about forgiveness as maybe being even bigger than a nation, but humanity itself. And why do we want or need forgiveness at that global level? And doesn't it carry weight there too? And I think the answer is yes, of course it does. Humanity coming together is always a big deal. I mean, the more we see each other as one and the same, the closer we are to being uplifting ourselves to the highest levels that humans can imagine and not wallowing in our individual conflicts and strifes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As we close, would you share? You must have so many stories to share about the ways in which forgiveness has affected beautiful possibilities. But I don't know. Would you maybe pick one and close out with us with that?
Yeah, sure. What just popped into my head here is a story of a woman named Eva Moses Core. Is this somebody that you're familiar with? Eva Moses Core. So Eva was a Romanian Jew in the 1940s. She was 10 years old when her twin sister, her two other sisters, and her parents were rounded up by Nazis, put in a cattle car, taken to Auschwitz, put on a debarkation platform, and the soldiers directed her parents and her two older sisters to be slaughtered in the gas chambers, and Eva and her twin sister to be, because they were identical twins, to be taken to Joseph Mengele's laboratories to be experimented with, to become study subjects in horrific ways. So she was just 10 when she did this. Amazingly, she and her sister, she almost died as a result of being injected with different substances, and her sister as well. But they survived long enough, about 8 or 9 months, I guess. And this was in 1945 or 44, 45, in that range. And the Soviet army came and liberated Auschwitz. And they were saved. They were the only two people in their family that survived. Mm. They were then taken, they lived with an aunt for a while. Then they were taken to Israel, and they lived there for a while. And eventually Eva married another Holocaust survivor, came here to the United States to live in Terre Haute, Indiana. Throughout her adult life, she went on a quest to have Joseph Mengele arrested and punished, as well as other Nazis. So she made this kind of her life's mission, was to punish really people who had done the most horrific types of crimes you can imagine anybody ever committed. This went on until she was 60 years old. And during this time, she was in excruciating pain, it seems, every day of her life. How could a woman who had been through so much, how could she ever heal? What would be a drug? Can anybody think of a drug that would heal this kind of pain? I mean, this is kind of as bad as it can get. Eventually, Mengele was found to have died. So he died before he was captured. He had eluded capture for a decade. So she couldn't even get the justice and revenge that she wanted against him. And so she was left with nothing and even more pain. And she began to be mocked for her quest. So people in society really got tired of it. She was just too strident. So she was just getting it from all sides. And then her beloved sister, passed away as well. So she was at maximum pain now. But she eventually had this opportunity to record a documentary with an actual Nazi physician who worked in Auschwitz. And she agreed to sit down with this guy and be interviewed with him. And so she did. And she traveled to his house in Bavaria and confronted him with what had happened. And he is the only physician that was released from the trials, the Nuremberg trials, the only physician from Auschwitz, because he had refused to participate in these debarkation, selecting people who would live and die process. But he said, he also said, I witnessed the slaughter of tens of thousands of people in the gas chambers, and it haunts me to this day. And she said, would you put that in writing, and would you take that and repeat that out loud at the ruins of Auschwitz? And he agreed, amazingly. And she then went, wow, I can't believe a Nazi physician is doing this, or a Nazi doctor. So I want to think of a way to thank him. And the way she came up with was to forgive him alone, for what he had done, and to put that in writing and to read it at Auschwitz on the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz with him. It's just this is all on, it's all recorded on film. It's been on PBS documentaries, lots of other media. I hadn't even been aware of it until the last year. So it's this dramatic footage of her and him standing there. But she was confronted with a friend who said, look, your problem isn't really with this guy. Your problem is with Joseph Mengele and the rest of the Nazis. Are you willing to forgive them? And she thought about it and decided that would be her only way to ever escape the pain of what happened to her. And so she closed herself in a room. She imagined confronting Joseph Mengele right in front of her. She said everything terrible and accusatory that she could think of and that she had longed to say all of her life. And then at the end of just venting her spleen against this imaginary Joseph Mengele, who she tried in absentia and essentially for all of his crimes, she said, despite all that, I forgive you. I forgive you. And she said that was the moment, the only moment in her entire life, 60 years of pain, when she finally felt the pain stop. And she went on for the rest of her life, 20 more years, to talk to people about the power of forgiveness and its medicinal value, its value for helping people overcome even the most horrific forms of trauma. So that's my story beyond stories of what forgiveness can do.
Been talking to James Kimmel Jr. James, thanks so much for your new book, The Science of Revenge, and the wonderful work you're doing in the world. Thank you so much, and thanks for your generosity with your time with us today.
Thank you, Lee, for the opportunity.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.
If you've ever blasted synth beats from your boombox or burned CDs for your besties, this one's for you. As people get older, much like their music tastes, their health needs change. AG1 is the simple daily health drink designed to deliver over 75 essential daily nutrients and pre- and probiotics to support energy, digestion, and mood, so you can make the most out of every decade and dance break. Learn more at drinkag1.com.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible. Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Carriot Harmon, Jason Cheesley, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, and Audrey Griffith. Our theme song was composed by Tim Lauer. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studio.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyers rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.